The snowstorm came without warning. Just hours earlier, the neighborhood had been cold but manageable. Then the wind rose, the sky turned white, and power lines snapped like twigs. And just like that, everything went dark. No heat, no light, no phone signal. At the end of the block, inside a small, aging apartment, Sarah held her son tightly against her chest. Ethan was burning up. His tiny body trembled as sweat rolled down his flushed forehead, yet his hands and feet were ice cold. Sarah wrapped him in every blanket she owned, put socks over his socks, and even her own coat around his little body. Still, his breathing stayed shallow. Sarah was strong. She always had been. The kind of woman who endured quietly. The kind who never asked for help. But tonight, fear crept in. The heater sat lifeless. Frost climbed the windows. A single candle flickered in the kitchen, casting long, dancing shadows. Her phone had died hours ago. There would be no ambulance, no neighbors calling to check in, no help coming. Ethan coughed weakly and pressed his face into her shoulder. And in that moment, something inside Sarah broke. She pulled on her worn coat, slid her boots over thin socks, and wrapped Ethan in the thickest blanket left. His small fingers clung to her collar, as if he knew what was at stake. When she opened the door, the cold hit her like a physical wall. Snow whipped sideways, stinging her cheeks. But through the swirling white, she saw it. A house at the end of the street, lit. A golden light glowed behind thick curtains, warm, calm, alive. It didn't belong there. That house was new, modern, completely out of place in this tired, old neighborhood. People whispered about the man who lived there. A tech CEO, a single dad. Quiet. Private. Sarah had never spoken to him, not even a simple hello. But desperation has a way of silencing pride. She stepped into the storm. Each step felt heavier than the last. The snow was deep, and the wind fought her every inch of the way. Her heart pounded with one terrifying question. What if he turns us away? She reached the porch, her body shaking from cold and fear, and hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, she knocked. The door opened almost instantly. Warm air rushed out, wrapping her like a blanket. A tall man stood there, Daniel. His eyes moved past her immediately, straight to Ethan. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered, her breath shaking. My son, he's burning up. There's no heat, no power. Can we stay just for tonight? For a long, agonizing second, Daniel said nothing. Then he stepped aside. Come in, he said quietly. Let's get him warm first. Sarah nearly collapsed from relief. Inside, Daniel moved with a calm precision. He brought fresh blankets, stoked the fireplace until it roared to life, and gently placed a cool cloth on Ethan's forehead. There were no questions, no judgment, just pure, simple kindness. As the snow buried the street outside, Sarah realized something she had avoided for years. She had asked for help, and someone answered. The night passed slowly. Ethan's fever began to break. Sarah sat on the floor near the fire, wrapped in borrowed warmth and an unfamiliar sense of safety. His fever's coming down, Daniel said gently, handing her a mug of hot tea. Tears burned her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Sometimes, Daniel said, his voice soft, you have to knock on a door. And that's okay. She didn't sleep that night, not from fear, but from something heavier, something more profound. Relief. By morning, the storm had passed, and Ethan was already starting to feel better. Sarah thanked Daniel and left quickly, a part of her afraid to overstay the kindness she'd been shown. But the kindness followed her home. That evening, a warm meal appeared on her doorstep. There was no name, just a simple note that read, for the little fighter and his brave mom. From then on, things changed quietly. Little acts of care kept appearing. Sometimes it was a bag of groceries, other times a set of new batteries for her flashlight. Ethan started calling Daniel the warm man. Whenever they saw him outside, Daniel would always wave first, a small smile on his face. Weeks later, the power went out again. It was late at night. Suddenly, Sarah heard footsteps near her back door, then a rattling handle. Her heart froze. But before panic could fully take hold, bright lights snapped on, illuminating her entire backyard. And then a familiar voice called out, I'm here. You're not alone. It was Daniel. He had already upgraded the entire block security system, installing motion sensor lights for everyone. That night, Sarah didn't pretend to be strong anymore. She just cried, and Daniel didn't try to fix her tears. He just stayed, a quiet presence until she felt safe again. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Daniel didn't just fix heaters. He fixed leaky windows, old pipes, and most importantly, he fixed her sense of security. But more than that, he made space for them in his life. Ethan flourished under his gentle attention. One day, while they were all in the living room, Ethan turned to Daniel and said, without thinking, "Can you draw a spaceship, Daddy Dan?" The room went silent. Daniel froze for a second, then a wide, genuine smile spread across his face. "Only if you help me with the stars," he replied. Sarah watched them from the doorway, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. One quiet evening, as they sat together after Ethan had fallen asleep, Daniel spoke. "I don't want to just fix your home," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers. "I want to build one with you in it." Sarah didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. Her heart had already given him the answer long ago. Spring came, and with it, something completely unexpected. Daniel placed a document on her kitchen counter. It was the deed to her apartment, in her name. "For you," he said simply, "so no one can ever take your home from you again." She cried then, for the first time, not from fear or sadness, but from pure, unadulterated joy. A year later, Daniel stood on a stage, not as a CEO accepting an award for business, but as a man, a husband, and a father. "Home," he said, looking out at the crowd but seeing only her, "is the door you open when someone has nowhere else to go." Sarah stood beside him, holding his hand. Ethan beamed from the front row. The first snow of the new winter returned quietly. Inside their warm, bright home, laughter filled the air. Suddenly, Ethan ran to the front door. "Daddy, the door's broken," he shouted playfully. Daniel laughed. "Then we fix it together." He and Sarah walked to the door and opened it. Snow fell gently outside, but this time, it never touched them, because some doors, once opened with kindness, never truly close.